Hello, everybody. My name is Eric Fleming, and what I'm going to talk to you today about is water security in the Tucson Basin. I'm from Tucson, Arizona, and water is a big deal where I grew up. Just to give you a place to hang your hat, here we are. Tucson is in southern Arizona. We're about 100 kilometers away from the Mexico border. We are smack dab in the middle of the Sonoran Desert, and we're about equidistant as the crow flies from Albuquerque, Las Vegas, and San Diego, which is always an interesting thing for me to think about. Just some maps. Here on the left is a satellite image of Tucson that I pulled off of Google Maps. We have the Tucson Mountains kind of separating our water table into two main parts. We have the Avra Valley side on the left and the Tucson Basin on the right. This is the depth to groundwater levels throughout the Tucson water service area. And you can't read this, it's too tiny, but this magenta color that we have a hint of here and here in the south is 800 feet to the water table, where the light blue is 25 feet or less. So we get kind of this range front recharge off of the Catalina Mountains that makes it pretty high. And now for water in our desert location, the basin on average is getting 11.2 inches of rain a year. And as far back as 1970s, the local rivers were recording about 330 dry days a year. So it's been dry for at least the past 50 years. And we really only see the rivers run when there is a monsoon rain event. Before the 1940s, there was the Santa Cruz River, and this is a picture I just snapped a little bit a ways from my house. It used to run all year long. And it's no longer running because for the last century, most of the potable water has been pumped out of the water table, and it's dropped it by 200 feet or more all across the valley. To help us get off of the water pumping, we started getting Colorado River water through the Central Arizona Project Canal. And this quote here is often misattributed to Mark Twain, but it's not a Mark Twain quote, sadly. But we do say out west that whiskey is for drinking and water is for fighting over. So the canal was dug from the Colorado River, which forms the Arizona-California border, and California paid for the construction of our side of the canal so that they could get ahead of us in line for the Colorado River water draws. So Arizona is now the last state to get its allotment, and Mexico also gets an allotment, but Mexico hardly gets any water at all, and the Colorado River no longer flows into the Sea of Cortez. This is from the National Resource Defense Council. This was a pulse flow where we did actually let water run all the way to the sea to see what would happen. And this overuse of the Colorado River has had profound effects on the environment and everything up on especially the southern end of the river. Now, what we did with our water allotment, there are laws in Arizona requiring developers and municipalities to have a 99-year supply of water as we develop or increase the size of our cities. So in a lot of places, they started groundwater banking with CAP water in the mid-90s, where they would use stream bed or even injection well recharge of unused portions of the CAP allotment. And with this recharge, they started making market-based transfers of the water. So in one place they would recharge, in another place they would pump out, or they would actually earmark recharge in certain regions for use elsewhere to satisfy development and municipal obligations. Phoenix, our ghastly neighbor to the north, is actually like the fourth largest city in the United States now by population, probably the largest by land area. And they only get this growth through kind of monkeying with the system here. The only good thing to come from this is that the aquifers get a 5% cut of all the water that is transferred in and out. So we have been having some net recharge out of this. Now, Tucson's use of water, you can see in the past from the 1940s until the mid 90s, it was all groundwater pumping that supplied our water. And then we started some reclaimed water use and just a little spike of Colorado River water. It wreaked havoc on all the pipes here when it was first being used, made all of the dissolved ions in our water that had kind of laminated the inside of the pipes come out, make it a gross brown color. So they stopped that, but they finally got the chemistry right. And currently we are on in mostly Colorado River water. We use some reclaimed and recycled water. And we have stormwater, which is a thing that's kind of hot here. Some interesting facts are that the water use has actually gone down in total, even as the population has increased for the past 20 years. A lot of this is about public awareness. People stopped planting lawns, which use 62 column inches of water, updating of plumbing fixtures, as well as closing down some mines. And all of this was happening in what was recorded as the worst multi-decadal drought of the past 1,000 years in the Southwest. We had a really strong El Nino rain in the winter of 2018, 2019 that stopped the drought. And this is actually a picture I took of one of our rivers, the Rito, that ran for more than 40 days straight. And this just cracked me up. Somebody had a little inflatable dinghy, and you can see they got stuck on a sandbar and had to walk away from it. But in the middle of this drought, we decided to renegotiate the Colorado River water usage because it was pegged at really levels of water that do not happen in the Colorado River watershed anymore. So even though we started to see some positive returns, we in Tucson and Arizona in general are not guaranteed the level of water that we have been getting from the Colorado River. And currently, even though we had the drought snap, we are less than 5 inches of rain, and it is November. So we're going to have the lowest rain of my entire lifetime in the region this year. Now, as this has been going on, there have also been some creative grassroots recharge movements. They started with what we call guerrilla curb cuts, and Brant Lancaster really popularized this, where it was illegal at the time and considered defacement of public property to cut pieces of the curb out. Because what we get in our monsoon rains is you'll get 2 inches of rain in an afternoon, and it just floods everywhere, and it overwhelms the sewer system, and it just shoots right out of town. And this was a kind of hydrologist and activist attempt to get us off of using fossil water to water our plants while we had just tons of it coming down. And some people did the math, and they figured out the Tucson Basin itself and all the water catchment is over 1,000 square miles. And if we get just under a foot of rain a year, that's making hundreds of thousands of acre feet more than we need for municipal and industrial use in the region. And these would start off just as a little cut in the road. They would put a little basin in and attract the water. And for a while, this was seen as some crazy hippie stuff to be doing. It started well before Lancaster's last edition of the book was 2020. But it went from guerrilla and quasi-legal methods into legitimized policy programs. We're having policy decisions around our county and definitely in the city being made to keep stormwater in situ for infiltration. And the low water plant growth that can happen in these interesting infiltration basins, super small scale distributed throughout the valley, is actually mitigating some of the urban heat island effect. And public-private partnerships, we have some groups that would donate time to, this is a school in the neighborhood just south of me, and they were leading a tour showing what they had just done in making this basin. And you get these kind of volunteer local plants cropping in, a couple scraggly looking trees. And then after the next rainy season, we have some really good tree growth that is happening, as well as capturing hundreds of thousands of gallons at each site where they can take what is otherwise a barren dusty area and make it into something a little bit more attractive and help with the local recharge efforts. Now, as these things have been going and we've been adding the Colorado River water that is unused from our recent drawdown in water usage, we have seen the water table improve, and certain sites around the city basin are seeing over 20 feet of water table rise. So this is kind of our weird resilience program to secure water future. Climate change being what it is, we had 100 days over 100 degrees for the first time this year, and realistically speaking, no rain. So it may or may not be helping out in the long term. But here are my references for the project, and I will be saying goodbye and thank you guys all for listening to me today.